Hello and welcome to this demo. In this demo, we will be looking at how to use web services in our SSIS packages. So let's fire up bids. I'll create a new project. Integration services project. I'll call this as web service SSIS. So before we proceed, we need to first make a web service. So I'll just go to my Visual Studio. I'll create a new project and I'll create a ASP.NET web service application. I'll call this as web service underscore SSIS. I made my package name as same, so I'll just rename it to web svc underscore SSIS. So just modify this to hello world from SSIS. I'll just run this package, this web service. And it's going to return me some XML. So this is our method name. Once we invoke this, we'll be getting the string that we just returned through our method. Okay, so if I just replace this by WSDL, I'll be getting the entire chunk of XML. So I'll just save this. I'll call this as web svc, save it in my demos folder. So yeah, we pretty much have our web service ready. We need to go ahead and host this in our IIS, but for now, since Visual Studio is running and I've got my development server running over here, I'll just continue with this. I'm not going to host it elsewhere. But when you are probably making use of web services in SSIS, you need to first host it in your IIS. Okay, so now we are in our bids interface. So what I'm going to do right now is just add a new connection. So in our set of connections, we have an option called as HTTP connection. I'm going to add that. So it is going to ask me my server URL. So let me just take this WSDL path, and you can actually tell it to use a specific credentials, or you can also use a client certificate if your web service demands so. You can actually set the timeout in seconds and so on and so forth. Also, other options are to access the web service through a proxy. So here are the options. You might have to give the proxy URL followed by the user ID and password plus the domain name. For now, let's just test the connection. The connection succeeded. Clicking on OK. So we have defined a new connection manager. Now if you look at the control flow items, there is a task called as web service task. So this is the task that we would be interested in right now. I'll call this as hello world web service. So I'll just right click and say edit. So first and foremost, I need to give my connection manager. So this is the one that we just created, and then we need to navigate to the WSDL file. So this is the one that I downloaded. So I'll just rename this as WSDL, and I should find it now. And so basically this option will indicate whether an existing WSDL file can be overwritten or not. So for now I have to keep it as true. If you look at, so it's saying the input WSDL file is not valid. Let us just check what has happened there. Just open this with Notepad. Oh, let me just download it again. Save link as service or files. Okay, so now let's see if, okay, so now we have got the WSDL path. So let me just go and again select the WSDL file, and now it hasn't given me the error, so probably it's the right one. So this is my service name. It identified my method and we need to define an output. So the output can be a variable, so the results from the web service can be stored in a variable or a file connection. I'll choose file connection for now, and I'll create a new connection. So I'll create a file and store it in, say, web svc results dot txt, right? So can pretty much give some expressions once you have some variables defined. For now let's leave it as it is. Click on OK, and I'm going to debug my package. So it turned green. Let's navigate to our web service results.txt, and here you can find the string that was returned by your web service, hello world from Visual Studio. So that was pretty much it. Other things that you could do is have the result stored in a variable. So we found two options, one was a file connection, other was a variable. Then probably drag and drop a script task or something and perform some further operations on that, but you get the idea. Thanks.